Hello, rulers! Last week we got a glimpse of what we are adding to the Wandering Nobles DLC. Today, we are back to discuss the new Wandering lifestyle and the new activities it unlocks in more depth. As mentioned last week, it is set up like all the other lifestyles in the game, with 27 perks spread across 3 lifestyle trees, 3 new traits, and 3 attached focuses. Unlike our other lifestyles in the game, it is not connected to an education trait, but to the traveler trait. Now you will gain a 10% monthly bonus from the base traveler trait and an additional 20% for every level in the wanderer trait path. The way we see this lifestyle is that for some characters, it might be something to go for right away to use some of its bonuses. For many others, however, it would rather be a natural step after finishing a tree in another lifestyle and having had time to travel around to build up their traveler trait. Last week, we looked at the whole tree to see what it looked like for landed characters, whereas this time, we're going to show you what it looks like for landless characters. The 2 rightmost trees have minor variations, whereas the inspection tree had to almost entirely be recreated for the new playstyle. We're going to start off with Wayfarer. A Wayfarer is not a person who goes out into the forest for the sake of going anywhere, but rather someone who enjoys the journey itself. They enjoy traveling, and exactly where they end up is less important. Before we start, one last thing to say is a bit about lifestyle philosophy when we created these new lifestyle trees. We wanted each tree's first perk, the intro perk, to generally be suitable for anyone, so it's easy to dip into any of them and still feel like you get some kind of bonus worth taking. We believe it's easier to entice people to go further down the tree if they have invested some points. Then we have a midpoint where we unlock the activity, which we wanted to be the halfway capstone trait. It is supposed to define the tree, after all. We also included 1 capstone perk right before the trait so you would feel it worth finishing up the rest of the tree. Every tree should have at least 2 themes that will synergize throughout the tree. And finally, you should be active to gain these trees bonuses. You engage with this lifestyle. The lifestyle does not engage with you. So, with that in mind, what were the themes for the Wayfarer tree? We attached it to fame, prestige, experience, and for stress loss. Attaching it to fame rather than prestige enables us to give out some more sources without worrying about giving out an abundance of prestige to the player. We also wanted to include a bit of friendly ruler traveling through their domain kind of feel, so we have some perks trying to enable that fantasy. So let's get into it and take a look at the tree. We'll start off with Well Prepared. This perk was supposed to give you a simple way to make traveling safer. If you want to travel around a fair bit, which is the point of this tree, we want it to be less costly and dangerous. We also included a supply boon because it fits the name of the perk. Far and Wide. This is the first perk dipping into the fame synergy we wanted for the tree. By letting you travel around more safely for the first perk, and now giving you a fame gain, you can start racking up fame while participating in activities or traveling to distant lands. Just One More Hill. This is inspired by the 2 educational perks of the game. The Pedagogy perk in the Scholar tree and the Groom to Rule perk in the Family Hierarchy tree. We wanted a way to enable the player to prepare their heir for the tree if they wanted to dip into it with their next character and give them a solid way to pass on the traveler trait from one character to another. This takes us to Storyteller. The first capstone perk of the tree enables both the fame and stress loss synergy. It gives you fame from hikes and random travel events, and the activity is intended to be a very effective way of removing stress, similar to Feast. Now for Of the People. The first perk in this tree has 2 different variations, one for playing into the friendly ruler fantasy and the other into the fame theme. In both cases, we wanted to inspire the character to move around often. Local Hero. For the Wayfarer tree specifically, we made the perk of both lines leading up to the trait a bit of a capstone perk. In this case, the local hero one is intended to be a great boon for those grabbing all that fame, giving them a decent diplomacy boost. It also gives you access to 2 new travel options, one of which provides you with another way to play into fame and stress loss. Travel Companion. This is just a simple perk that increases the opinion of everyone traveling with you at any given time and improves the Caravan Master aptitude of anyone currently serving that role for you. The Home Away from Home. This is the capstone perk for stress loss. You can increase your stress while traveling and open up a new activity option. Expanding the time spent on a hike. This should give you more options to lose stress or gain fame. And finally, the Wayfarer. The trait tries to tie together the 2 synergies that we have played into throughout this tree. It gives you higher stress loss the more fame you have, as well as giving you the prowess fame bonus. It does mean, at the end of the day, that how many boons you get out of these last perks matter how much fame you have managed to scrounge together. But we felt that was fine and played into one of our philosophies from earlier. You have to, most likely, be active to get fame, which in turn will give you a good boon at the end here. So, on to our second tree, the Voyager tree. If the Wayfarer tree was about the one who enjoyed the journey but didn't care about the destination, then the Voyager tree is the opposite. It's not the journey they care about, it's where they're going. When explaining their fantasy, we have tried to describe them as the tourist tree. The themes we have explored for this tree focus on points of interest and languages. The points of interest theme was an obvious fit for it, whereas the language theme just happened as we played around with themes that might fit into the tree. Of course, the tree isn't limited to just those 2 things. So let's take a look at Powered Home or Organized Camp. When we originally made the perk for landed gameplay, being able to handle your region at home would help someone who would regularly travel abroad to see things. If the idea was that you should be able to travel to distant places, we didn't want you to get punished too hard immediately. So that idea did not easily reflect into a landless variation, so we instead tried to dip more into our idea of having something that is just generally good to dip into for landless play, and that was an across-the-board boon to provisions and travel speed. Mercenary Contracts. We wanted to give the Voyager an easy, cheap option to provide general boost to their travels, but taking a travel option spot. This means you could travel far with fewer dangers, presumably, but you are giving up other opportunities. Due to the name, we attached a bonus to hiring regular mercenaries as well. Next, we're going to be looking at Journey Planner, and finally there. Starting with Journey Planner, looking into opportunities to go to distant locations, we figured a boon to diplomatic range would be an exciting option. One thing to note is that it is not an easily obtainable modifier in many places of the game, giving another reason for dipping into the tree. Another thing to note, it is that the tree unlocks diplomatic range matters for the Monument Expedition activity, so increasing it slightly means you'll have access to more locations for that activity if you so wish. And with finally there, we wanted to empower the player when they finally reach their destination in a journey to play into the core idea of the tree. Initially, we simply gave the player a prestige and stress bonus every time they reached their destination in a journey. However, this didn't quite work when we looked at the tree for landless characters, as, well, they could reach a destination every other day if they kept moving their camp about. Instead, we attached the same idea directly to points of interest, which synergizes surprisingly well with another perk further down the tree. We initially kept the original idea for landed gameplay, but after seeing the synergy and how much cleaner it looked, we changed it to the same as the landless one. And here we are at Journey, the midway capstone perk of the tree. It's here that you unlock the Monument Expedition, The activity was strong enough that we did not need to attach many other effects to this one. The first perk that plays into the language theme, making it slightly easier to learn new languages. Next, we have Souvenirs Aplenty. As part of this tree, we wanted to include at least one perk where you could effectively bring home development, but we wanted to ensure it couldn't be stacked infinitely. In that sense, we figured it might be fun if you, as a, for example, slightly backward Scandinavian, traveled to Constantinople to see the sights and were inspired to improve your homeland. This was simply another one that didn't reflect well as a landless perk. We tried different variations, some decreasing building cost for a period, etc. But in the end, none of them felt quite right, so we simplified it and reimagined it as a perk where going to new places would give a non-stacking opinion boon with your camp. Speaking of opinion boost, gracious host and impeccable guest. We imagined this perk as someone who has often been traveling to other cities and knows the etiquette and manners expected of you no matter where you are. Someone who can equally serve up an impressive feast for strangers on one side and attend one in an exotic court on the other. This is the primary payoff for the language theme, as you get a neat bonus for all your court positions. It's not grand or super impactful, but it can add up if you have a lot of different active court positions. And now, closing in on the end, we have Been There, Done That. This is the other perk mentioned in the Finally There perk. It increases almost all rewards you gain from points of interest by 30%, with a few exceptions like events triggering or gaining traits. This is the absolute capstone perk of the tree, and it enables a playstyle mostly traveling around and seeing points of interest with monument expeditions and pilgrimages while still racking up lifestyle experience points, a lot of prestige, and reducing stress. And finally, the Voyager trait itself. Unlike its Wayfarer equivalent, we wanted this trait to play less into the synergies of the tree, but more be a composite of the tree. It bumps up the diplomatic range gain even further and increases your travel speed, giving you access to even more points of interest previously out of range. Okay, let's get into the Inspector trait. The final tree of the lifestyle is the Inspector tree, and as you may notice, we will split this into two different sections altogether, rather than simply showing the variations of the perks. This was one of the trees that saw a significant rework for landless gameplay due to how the tree was initially structured for landed gameplay. When we started making this tree, we wanted a tree that was very much built up around a managerial figure who would travel the realm regularly to make sure everything was up to scratch. The one who periodically shows up unannounced in a vassal's domain to ensure that they are doing their job correctly. The themes for this tree are fuzzier, and it is more playing into a specific idea of having to travel to holdings around the realm to give them a temporary boon. You go somewhere, host an activity, or make a decision somewhere, and that place is improved for a while. At the top of the list, we have Mustering. This first one is a simple boon as you travel through holdings of your realm, improving any stationed men-at-arms there by about 5 to 10% for 15 years. In other words, consider it a war preparation, making sure that you do the rounds and inspire your men so they get into that fighting spirit. Next, we have Know Your Land, Know Your People. This is a mouthful, but less impactful than it first seems. The bonuses you get in opinions from your vassals for this should be negligible, and the importance lies, however, in the marriage acceptance boon. It means that within your realm, you have a significantly higher chance of being able to grab any marriage you may wish, both for yourself and your extended family. Want to ally with a pesky vassal who keeps being an issue to your rule? This could push up the acceptance level enough to make that happen. Now, we do understand that certain players are going to read this as a marriage acceptance with close and extended family, and technically speaking, that would be true as long as they are in the realm with you. Anyway, with that aside, on to No Stone Unturned. As part of our work on this lifestyle tree, we want to give the player more active tools for gaining control and development, of which this perk is a key part. By hosting feasts, hunts, inspections, and other activities, you can now focus on where you want to improve something. Need to hold a feast, and you recently had a popular revolt ruin the control in your domain? Now you can handle both of those at the same time. Moving right along, we have travel logs. We often notice that many players ensured that they only traveled relatively safely, so the seasoned trait track had little time to shine. As a ruler who was actively trying to make sure their realm was safe and taken care of, it felt natural that you would be able to increase this trait track even if you didn't directly experience the danger, simply because you were so directly working against it. And now we've reached Inspection, the first capstone perk of our tree, which opens up this new activity. This should open up the fantasy of traveling around your realm more appropriately, as we will later see when discussing the activity. We also attach some tax bonuses. After that, we have Arbitration. This unlocks a new decision where you can stop a journey to manage the domain for a while. Effectively, you will trade some prestige and travel time to gain legitimacy and either remove corruption in that domain or gain a temporary modifier that will increase levy size, holding taxes, or development. This plays into the same logic as the No Stone Unturned, where you can more directly manage one holding and take care of any issues it might have. What's a good trip without charts and itineraries? This unlocks a new decision. You could write a book about your travels somewhere. This is a leftover for when the tree was focused more on surveying the land rather than inspecting it, when we were focused more on mapping out your realm, etc. We like how this direction turned out, so we kept it as is, even if things around it have changed ever so slightly. Then we find ourselves at the Personal Touch. This is the proper capstone perk of this tree, binding together No Stone Unturned, Inspection, and Arbitration into one, either giving you them for free or improving them. This should be a noticeable boon for those who want to simply do realm gardening and ensure their little realm runs smoothly. And that brings us to the Inspector trait. With a similar logic to the Voyager trait, this is supposed to, at a glance, tell a player what kind of fantasy this tree is supposed to provide to you as a player. It's about realm management and gardening and ensuring all the little bits and bobs work as they should. But as mentioned previously, we're not done with Inspector yet. We're getting ready to dive into the landless version of the tree. Here we asked ourselves if we could keep the same logic as we did for the landed tree. After all, it was a tree focused on improving your realm, which is hard to simulate with a character that doesn't hold land. In the end, we decided to do away with the central theme of the tree and look for something that might work better for the landless playstyle instead. We landed, see what we did there, on a theme around improving your understanding of a specific terrain. Simply put, you could become the master of a particular field or area. We start off with Finding Your Way. So, the very first perk of this tree is critical to setting up the rest of the tree. We unlock a new decision for you where you can choose to designate a type of terrain that you would like to focus on. We've separated them into 4 broad categories: woodlands, highlands, lowlands, and drylands. For many perks following this, you will then enable bonuses to the designated terrain. As we look at changing the Knowing Your Land perk, we still wanted to try and keep some of the same fantasy, but rather than knowing your land or its people, you know the terrain you specialize in and how you can keep yourself alive as you travel through it. As a significant boon to the gather provisions decision, it is even a more helpful tool in getting extra provisions, particularly if you spend most of your time in your designated terrain. We knew that we wanted to put a battle bonus into navigating the wilds. After all, as we started playing around with the idea of specializing in a terrain, one of our first ideas was the renowned bandit group holed up in a mountain pass. We want you to feel like when you're fighting on your terrain, you are truly in your element. Earth's Bounty was a bit of a doozy. Replacing the inspection trait was not easy as it was vital to the original tree. What we looked at was to continue the logic from the Knowing the Land perk, where provisions are less of a problem as you travel through your designated terrain. Opening up the quartermaster and head porter positions irrelevant to the buildings mean you'll always have an effective ways of handling provisions. After making Earth's Bounty, we had to consider the right-hand man trait. You see, we felt that we had a tiny sub-theme of officers in the tree now, so we thought we could play further into that with this trait. The second officer is the most crucial position you can have as a landless character, and this is a way to ensure that they are doing their utmost for you. The second part of the perk is a bit of an experiment to see if it would be interesting for the player to gain skill bonus based on their current camp purpose, slightly inspired by other perks such as Friendly Council in the Family Hierarch system, or Learn on the Job from the Scholar trees. As you might imagine, the exact skill will change depending on your camp purpose, such as Martial and Prowess for Swords for Hire, or Learning and Stewardship for Scholars. So here we are with the King of the Wilds. This is the capstone perk of this lifestyle, unlocking a decision to hyper-focus on a specific terrain from the ones in your designated terrain group. For example, if you chose Highlands the first time, you can now select between mountains, hills, or desert mountains as your terrain to master. The general idea was that since you specialize in a particular terrain, you are likely to be often forced to take action outside of that terrain and then get 0 bonuses from this perk. So in turn, they should be extra strong when you finally get the chance to shine. Okay, so it's not quite the end of the journey. As we started working on the DLC, we knew we wanted to add activities so the player could open up more travel options. We already had many options across the base game activities, hunts, pilgrimages, and feasts, for example, and the DLC locked ones see grand activities, but we wanted to make something symbolic of each tree. In the end, though we had many different potential options, we ended up with 3 activities we wanted to go for. Hikes for the Wayfarer tree, so you can travel just for the sake of traveling. Monument expeditions for the Voyager tree, so that you can get to the points of interest you want to see. And the inspection for the Inspector tree, so you can improve the specific counties you want to improve. It was vital for us that each activity gave you more of what the lifestyle tree also gave you, but usually with minor tweaks or twists from the regular lifestyle. For example, the hike will give you stress loss and fame, but you also might be able to get a Wiseman trait experience. Now, speaking of hikes, it's the first activity we're going to be talking about. You can sit out with your guards and up to 1 special companion to leave life at court for a short bit. If you bring your companion, the events will change slightly based on that, and you will have opportunities to build a bond with them, or torment them if they aren't built for hiking. You will set out towards a location, usually quite remote from anything. As you reach the area, the activity will start, and you will take a short hike before you start the return journey back home. You will go through several events detailing your experience in the wilderness, some rarer than others. The systemic events of the activity, the start, middle activity, and the end events, don't have options, but any randomized events in between those will. You will meet people, see sights, or experience nature's good and bad sides. The Monument Expedition is the only one of the 3 that lets you travel outside your borders, which felt fitting considering the lifestyle trees and how they've been set up. You can go to any barony in the world with a special building, So it's not just any point of interest, but it will let you visit most of them. When you arrive at the activity's location, you could choose one skill to focus your efforts on as you explore the local sites. The alternatives will be based on the buildings and its type. And then, throughout the activity, you will have an opportunity to increase or decrease the chance of getting a skill boost. Most events related to the activity will either increase your chance of getting extra skill boons or give you an option for good core position holders. Finally, at the end of your journey, you will gain a slight skill improvement with the possibility of a second one based on how things turned out. Now then, to the final activity, inspection. Similar to the hikes, this can only be done within your own borders, giving you a few options based on where it is and what you want to do. One thing to note is that numbers might be higher than they should be in the following pictures. As you arrive, you will have 3 options to choose from. The first one is only available in border countries. They are claims and vassalization acceptance, taxes, country control and development, and finally, levies, opinion, and popular opinion. We made all the information easily accessible in the event, so you do not have to comb through menus to find it. In the picture, you can see that you have 325 levies in the county, 1.64 in taxes, 9 development, 10 popular opinion, and the local ruler has an opinion of 100 of you. The option chosen will affect the rest of the inspection and how things will turn out, and this will be the goal of the inspection. Based on your options here, many events in the rest of their activity might act slightly differently. For example, an option that would increase the chance of success for someone aiming to increase levies, opinion, and popular opinion might decrease the chances of success for someone aiming to increase taxes, control, and development. Halfway through the activity, you will get a second option to specialize. Here you get to choose even further. In this case, we decided on tax, country control, which is invisible due to it already being at 100, development as our first option. And here we get to choose between taxes and development to hyperfocus. This lets us decide which will have the strongest effect in the case of a successful inspection. Throughout the inspection, you'll encounter a fair number of events that give you opportunities to affect the county in some way. Most of these will have opportunities to increase or decrease the chance of success, which is at the heart of this activity. And of course, if things work out, you will get the rewards you sought. And that's all for this time. Hopefully you enjoyed this glance at the new lifestyles and new activities. With winter soon upon us here in the north, we figured we'd give you one last piece of art to look at before we jump out. Look at it and freeze like we all do. Oh, and remember to leave any questions you might have about the DLC, and we'll happily try to answer them, here or in the forums.